everyone, it's me, Mimi Combs, and today I'm going to be reviewing an anime that I just recently watched because it's really different from other ones I watched and I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on it, and I thought it'd be interesting to go into this one because it's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Chances are you've never heard this show because it was very badly received by like critics and audiences, and it's not very popular, but I think it's really good. And it's called Akunohara, or Flowers of Evil in English. It's available on Crunchyroll, but I'm not sure where else you can watch it for free. Maybe you could find it like on some sketchy websites, but I'm not soliciting that, so don't take that advice, but you know, you could probably find it somewhere online. This show is pretty like dark and kind of creepy because a lot of people describe it as social horror, and that's basically like situations where you're like scared, but it's just because of like the perception of the main character by other characters and stuff. It's not, there's no like gruesome or anything like bad in it, but it's just kind of like a thriller. The basic plot of Akunohara is this. There will be spoilers for the first episode, but it's just the premise, so no worries. Kasuga is in his second year of middle school, and he's kind of like a quiet person, kind of detached from everyone and just always reading a book. And one day he forgets his book at school and he needs to go pick it up, but he finds when he gets there that his crush's gym clothes are still there because she forgot them, and he makes the mistake and the unfortunate decision to steal her gym clothes. But one of his other students sees what happens, and this is Nakamura, and she confronts him the next day, telling him she knows that he's the one that stole this girl's gym clothes, and unless he does everything that she requests of him, unless he follows her every will and command, then she's going to tell the entire school. So he's like completely taken up by guilt. He's trying to figure out a way to return these gym clothes, but Nakamura just keeps manipulating him, and you get to see the unfortunate chain of events. The plot might not sound interesting from that description, but this show is really focused on the characters and you get to know a lot about them, and it's really interesting once you like kind of get into it. That said, there's a lot of like really boring and long scenes, and there's even one that's 7 minutes of just two people walking. I mean, I watched the whole thing, but I could hardly sit through it. And like a lot of other popular Japanese anime, this was adapted from a manga, which is basically a comic book, like a Japanese comic book. And whereas there's only one season of the anime, the manga actually covers a lot longer. And if the critical reception of Akunohana had been good, then we might have seen another season because it leaves it in kind of a bad place. But I think that it was still worth watching, and it's really interesting just to look up like the plot summary online afterwards to see what happens after, because I don't like reading manga that much. But why did they never make a second season of the anime? Why was it received so badly if it was like done so well and I have a high opinion of it, and there's a lot of people who have like really high opinions of it? Well, that would be because of the animation style. A lot of anime are in a similar style. It has become kind of an art style of its own. You can see like bigger eyes and just like it's a certain drawing style that just anime always usually does with some variation. But Akunohara is much different because they use rotoscoping, which is basically live action is like what's filmed, and then they animate over it in a certain way. So it looks much more realistic, and the expressions move kind of like twitchy. It's kind of twitchy, I would say. A lot of the audience was very angry about the difference in style from the manga, which is usual anime style, to the rotoscoping in the anime. It was received very poorly and basically was like a commercial failure, so they decided never to make a second season. Some of the things I think this show does very well are like the visuals and also the score, because the music really sets the mood for the whole thing, because the show is kind of quiet and more subdued, and then the soundtrack makes way for a lot of suspense, and I'm going to show you guys an example of that song in a minute, but for now let me just like talk more about like the theme of this, because it's very dark, and at the same time not much happens that would make it this way. There's not much like really scary stuff, but like it's stuff that could happen in like any show. but the fact that the music and like the visuals and the whole tone is very dark, it makes these things seem like a much bigger deal than they actually are. Part of what inspired me to make this video was another one I saw about how Akunohara deals with anxiety, and it shows that just like on a big scale, and I will link that in the description below, and this is also the thumbnail in case you guys see it. But basically it talks about how Kasuga feels extremely guilty for what he did, which was stealing his crush's gym clothes, which in retrospect wasn't absolutely terrible. He could have like come back from it, but the fact that he like keeps hiding his guilt makes him more and more anxious, to the part where like the point where like it would be absolutely terrible in his mind. It would like be like not even like an option to own up to what he did. And you get to see how it just completely changes him into a different person. He becomes more emotional and just like crazy, and even has like a breakdown because of all this guilt and anxiety that's built up inside of him. Even the author said something in like a foreword or afterword about this story being about the torments of puberty. So it's basically like all these heightened emotions and anxiety and everything, and how they can actually build up inside of a person. I think that's really interesting, but also it makes this a lot more difficult to watch, just watching Kasuga go through all this, and also knowing that Nakamura is the cause of everything. It's like Kasuga would be living like a much simpler life if it was not for Nakamura. So now I want to give a brief look into one of the scenes in Akunohara. I know my video will get copyright claim, but I don't care because I'm not making any money from it anyway. But what this is the ending song and a scene from the 7th episode. So if you don't want any spoilers, you can skip ahead to this time code. But I think that it would be fine to watch this. I've seen it even in just like some spoiler-free reviews, but I think it's a really impactful scene and definitely the climax of the show in my opinion. So in that scene you can see the really weird ending song mixed with a really cool like mental breakdown, and just like after the scene I was like, oh no, like he's gone insane. Like this is like his max mental like anxiety just like being let go and like just like explode. It's like he's exploding, like basically. And I think it was done super well because it goes along with the ending credits, and I was just so mesmerized by the scene. Even though it's terrible to watch, I'm just like, oh my god, what's happening? It was so well done. Also, a lot of what this author has talked about is how this is kind of based on his own like experience in puberty. Like none of the events actually happened, but like the characters are a lot inspired by his life and what he's experienced, and I think that was really interesting. And he also goes into how it's just about growth and the end of puberty and just like coming out of the other side, which unfortunately we don't get to see in the anime, but from what I've read about the manga, you do get to see like a nice ending, and there is a time skip, so you do get to see like a thorough conclusion. But why would you watch this anime when it's incomplete? I mean, I watched it even though I knew it was incomplete because I thought the first episode was really just different, and I think that the filming and everything and the style of it is worth watching. I think if you can deal with rotoscoping and that anime style that I showed you guys earlier, then I think this would be a really cool watch. If you're willing to deal with like a darker subject matter, I think this would be a definite underrated show. It's unnerving, and I think that is the point. It is supposed to be like this messy portrayal of like puberty and anxiety and guilt and emotion and just like unnerving sort of like emotional buildup. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Akunohara or Flowers of Evil. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I know most of you are probably not going to go watch the show afterwards, but I think it's just still interesting to talk about. Thank you so much for watching. That's all for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!